People love romances in video games. Just go look at fanfic site AO3 and you'll see a lot of people who have some very strong feelings about a very diverse variety of games. Games provide something that a lot of media doesn't give the audience: agency. It's all well and good watching beautiful people fall in love with each other on a show like Bridgerton, but it's not that you have any input. That's where games step in, giving people a chance to control how fictional relationships develop. But let's just say that video games have had a rocky history of portraying romance. At their worst, you get games that handle romance like the first Witcher game or the original God of War games, where sex is literally just used as a reward for players who solve a puzzle or find a hidden area. Romance becomes a checklist, a min-maxable speedrun where you figure out the most efficient button combinations to remove someone's bra. If you give someone free gifts, surely your relationship meter is filled up enough to give a cheeky handy under the table, right? It's worth mentioning that these sort of romantic systems, at least in mainstream games, are only ever about big, growly, bearded men and the sexy bimbos who plead to get him into bed. The best you'll get is something like Saints Row 4, which is basically only doing it to take the piss.
Hey Kinsey, you wanna fuck? Let's go.
A step up from that, you have games like Mass Effect or Stardew Valley. They still mostly treat romance like a minigame, where you have to fill up the bar by making the right button prompts at the right time, but they're much more emotionally involved. If you're trying to romance, say, Penny from Stardew Valley, you have to put some amount of effort in. You have to learn what gifts she likes and gifts she hates. You have to talk to her regularly, and as such you need to memorise her hobbies and interests so you know where she'll be. These relationships are about more than just getting a titillating cutscene, and a lot of players will form a genuine emotional bond with the NPC they're attempting to romance. These sort of games do usually attempt to appeal to women, and frequently try and appeal to LGBT people as well, offering a wide range of different romance options of varying genders, sexual preferences, and cultural backgrounds. But at the end of the day, you are still just making a bar go up by pressing buttons. Inevitably that bar hits a certain point, and Penny gives you a cheeky handy under the desk. It's still just a video game, so there's none of the subtleties of a real relationship. Your partner can't organically give you a gift, or decide to go on a break, or really act at all in any way outside of your control. It's still doing the exact same thing the first category does, rewarding the player with titillation. But this time the titillation comes in the form of emotional intimacy, rather than a 3D model of some breasts. It's in this second category that Dragon Age Inquisition lies. There is a third category, of course, where the romance is entirely predetermined and the player just watches a series of cutscenes play out, like Nate and Elena in Uncharted, but these are essentially indistinguishable from how a movie would do things, so we won't be discussing them here. If you want to be a real nitpicky bastard, there's also the sort of romances you get in freeform games like Crusader Kings or The Sims, and even dedicated dating sims like Monster Prom and Hatoful Boyfriend, and then that just leads to further subgenres like satirical horror dating sims like Doki Doki Literature Club and But we aren't talking about those today. This vid is all about those AAA, big budget, shooty slashy, E3 sort of games, and 99% of those fall into the first three categories. Anyway, back to Dragon Age. So, the specific Dragon Age romance I want to talk about is between Vallaslin and her companion Solas. Solas is an elf mage you encounter fairly early on in the game, a sort of hippy-dippy, love the spirits and learn about the world kind of dude, who teaches you about the weird green magic powers your character has suddenly developed. Vallaslin is, well, that's a bit more complicated. If you haven't played a Dragon Age game, let me do a quick little background explanation. It's an RPG where you create your own character, so you can choose a gender for your character, pretty normal, a class for your character, between mage, warrior and rogue, again, pretty normal, and a race, between human, dwarf, elf and Qunari. That last one's a little bit weirder, but it's still pretty normal for a fantasy RPG. Why these choices matter for this video is because Solas is only romanceable by a female elf player character, a combination that gets the last name Vallaslin. Why do I care so much that a fictional character is picky? It's because it immediately gives Solas something that a lot of romanceable NPCs are lacking: agency. Stardew Valley's inclusive everyone is bisexual system is incredibly accessible and gives the player a lot of freedom, but it also means that a character's sexuality is completely unrelated to their personality. Being bisexual doesn't inform a character's personality because everyone's bisexual. It's just the default state. There's no pride parades or homophobia or characters growing to accept who they are in the world of Stardew. Solas, on the other hand, is exclusively straight and exclusively interested in other elves. It seems a pretty uninteresting fact on the surface, a straight person who exclusively dates his own race, never heard of that before, but it suggests a lot when you think about it. Solas presents himself as a Renaissance man, someone keenly interested in discovery and open-mindedness.
The thrill of finding remnants of a 1,000-year-old dream? I would not trade it for anything.
And yet refuses to date outside of his own race. It's a clue that something isn't quite as it appears. Contrast him with Iron Bull, a secret policeman for a society that prides itself on conformity, and yet who is openly pansexual and romanceable for any race. Perhaps a hint that Iron Bull would thrive outside of the rigid confines of his culture, a possible option for the end of the game. Or perhaps just world-building that his culture simply values freedoms differently than a traditional Western view.
Really made love. Connected with someone in both body and soul.
I don't know. One time they used this thing called the Sato Nerapan. It's a leather-wrapped rod on a harness. That wasn't really my soul, though.
Dragon Age is mostly just a fill up the progress bar to get the sex scene sort of game, but it uses its romance system to help flesh out its world and offer players information about its history, its culture, and the potential hidden agendas of its characters. The romance between Solas and Vallaslin starts off pretty naturally. He's a fairly standoffish, awkward guy who spends a lot of his time talking to spirits in the Fade. If you haven't played a Dragon Age game, the Fade is like your standard alternate reality, magic dimension, where emotions become real and your imagination makes anything possible. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's the gist. If you flirt with Solas, he seems a bit hesitant and shy, but eventually kisses you in the Fade, because things are easier for him there, the dork. He's just a cute little nerd who only feels comfortable flirting with people in his World of Warcraft guild, and it progresses pretty normally from there. You can share a romantic little dance with him during the big fancy ball mission, and he starts calling you a pet name in Elvish.
Come with me, Vanan.
The really interesting stuff happens about 2/3 of the way into the game, after you've just killed the big bad guy's lieutenant in an ancient elven temple. Solas asks to speak to you, but seems oddly flustered and conflicted. He tells you that you have become more important to him than he could possibly have imagined, that he never expected to find someone who could draw his attention from the Fade.
You are unique. In all Thedas, I never expected to find someone who could draw my attention from the Fade. You have become important to me. More important than I could have imagined.
Remember that line? Eventually he announces that he must tell you the truth. He lets you in on a secret about your tattoos? Okay, quick rewind. During the character customization, you have the option of giving your character cosmetic tattoos, but perhaps unbeknownst to the player, a lot of these tattoos actually have deep significance within the world of Dragon Age. A dwarf player, for instance, might give their character a cool face tat, only to discover that Dwarven Society uses facial tattoos as a way to mark the casteless, the underclass of Dwarven Society, who are commonly forced to resort to begging or crime in order to survive. What, in another game, would be a simple cosmetic option, in Dragon Age actually affects who your character is and their place in the world. Elves also have meaning behind their tattoos, but theirs is much more positive. Very quick Dragon Age lesson for context. Elves used to be these regal, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien-esque style beings, but eventually got conquered by humans and were forced to become second-class citizens. Those who live with humans are called city elves, and those who survive in the wilderness and try and live like the old days are called Dalish. The player character is a Dalish elf. Alright, that's done. No more Dragon Age lessons, I promise. So when Dalish elves come of age, they're given Vallaslin, which are basically tattoos that each represent a traditional elven god, and the Dalish's promise to never again surrender their traditions and beliefs. Or so they think. You see, Solas reveals to you that the Vallaslin are basically no different to the dwarven facial tattoos. They're slave brands.
Your face. The Vallaslin. In my journeys in the Fade, I have seen things. I have discovered what those marks mean.
They honor the elven gods.
No, they are slave markings. Or at least they were in the time of ancient Alathan.
My clan's keeper said they honored the gods. These are their symbols.
Yes, that's right. A noble would mark his slaves to honor the god he worshipped. After Alathan fell, the Dalish forgot.
Each of the different designs used to represent a different slave owner the brandee belonged to. This is pretty earth-shattering news. It's like a married couple being told that live, love, laugh means I eat babies in Latin. It's like gamers being told that a Triforce tattoo is how paedophiles identified each other in ancient Greece. It's like Christians being told that the cross was actually what killed Jesus. Oh, wait, actually, scratch that one. It's something that happens a lot in Dragon Age, and something that I love, where the series establishes an accepted historical timeline, and slowly releases new information revealing that everything you knew was actually just half-remembered myths, or history written by the victor, or even just full-blown lies invented to cover up a conspiracy. It's also a pivotal moment in your relationship with Solas, as he's suddenly both given you this huge connection to your ancestors, this knowledge that no one else in your culture knows, and also given you a choice. Do you keep your tattoos and retain your pride in what they've come to represent? Or do you take Solas up on his offer to remove them and get rid of the slave brand that's marked your face for your entire life? No matter what you choose, Solas has changed how the characters view themselves. After years of NPC love interests only existing to be interacted with, give them gifts, do their loyalty quests, find out about their past, Solas has turned the tables and offered his own contribution to your story. Again, he has an agency that a lot of NPC romances simply don't have, and has unveiled information that fundamentally changes how a player might view their character and how they chose to make them look. An elven male would never get the opportunity to learn the origin of their tattoos, and would die thinking they represented their people's culture and honour, not their culture's slave-owning past. The decision to remove your Vallaslin is commented on by your companions. One such companion is Sarah, a city elf who dislikes the pompous data shelves, and dislikes you if you keep harping on about your heritage and culture, then how she should feel a connection to her people.
What are you laughing about?
The Dalish, they don't know anything. I mean, you know now, but they put on all this real elf stuff, and I knew it. It's all just fancy dress.
Telling her about the Vallaslin's true origin as slave markings only confirms what she already feels, but it gives you a chance to bond with her and gain her respect for changing your mind.
Nobody knows anything about real elves, except they're gone.
Well, no. You know what? It actually is pretty stupid. We need to do better.
Well, good for you, yeah? Learning and stuff. That's why you're in charge.
The romance isn't just there to get your blood flowing, although who doesn't get a bit hot under the collar looking at this sexy Welsh eggman, but potentially has an effect on your character's personal arc and motivations. But it also raises a very important question we'll put a pin in for now. How the hell does Solas know all this? He says he saw it in the Fade, but that seems a tad hand-wavy to me. If you choose to remove the Vallaslin, Solas does some fancy magic mumbo-jumbo and tells you, you are free.
Alasa Malarevas. You are free.
If you choose to keep it, he cuts you off as you explain yourself and tells you you are perfect just the way you are.
I know you told me because you wanted to help, but the Vallaslin is part of who I am. I hope you can see...
Stop. You are perfect exactly as you are.
Then, in the culmination of your romance, you embrace each other in a deep kiss. He places his hand on your butt, which is a bit forward, but go for it, bud. You earned it. But otherwise, it's a very classic romantic kiss at the end of the story, complete with an idyllic waterfall in the background. And then, this happens.
And I am sorry. I distracted you from your duty. It will never happen again.
Remember, this is the man who has guided you through the most turbulent period of your life. He's helped you control and embrace the magical ability that other people wanted to kill you for having. He's shown you the wonders of the Fade and its misunderstood inhabitants. And he's taught you things about your own people and history that no one else ever could. And then, through no fault of your own, he cuts you off. For the first time in my entire experience playing games, an NPC has been given agency to decide when a relationship ends. You are no longer the all-powerful RPG sex god who picks a random companion and effortlessly gets them into bed. You can respond in a lot of ways. You can beg him to change his mind, you can demand he tells you why, you can call him a cold-hearted son of a bitch and storm off, you can try and convince him you can make it work.
Wait. What? I say no to you altering my face, and just like that, we're done.
It's not that. I'm sorry, I should have ended this long before. I never wanted to hurt you.
But now Abalas, but now Vanan.
Whatever you pick, he's apologetic and genuinely sad, but insistent that you can't be together. And that's it. Whenever you talk to him about it, he says the relationship was selfish of him, and that you can both work better if you aren't together. It's over and there's nothing you can do about it. At the game's end, he forlornly tells you,
It was not supposed to happen this way. No matter what comes, I want you to know that what we had was real.
It's such a powerful moment of genuine confusion and loss, playing off of decades of expectation of how a BioWare-style romance should play out. The bad guy's been stopped, the world's been saved, but you're still alone and you're still confused. Of course, there's more going on here. Remember when I talked about different companions reacting to your Vallaslin removal? Let's talk about Cole's reaction. Cole is a childish spirit who sees the world through a haze of different emotions and feelings, constantly talking in vague riddles and struggling to see how people really work. He's basically BioWare's built-in Easter egg and lore spewing machine, and he has some very interesting stuff to say about the Vallaslin removal.
Stop. You are perfect exactly as you are. But then you turned away. Why?
I had no choice.
She feels her face marked, marred without malice. She didn't know. She thinks it's why you walked away.
You cannot heal this, Cole. Let her carry her anger in peace.
Perhaps Cole can get a better answer from you than I did.
He hurts, an old pain from before, when everything sang the same. You're real, and it means everyone could be real. It changes everything, but it can't. They sleep, masked in a mirror, hiding, hurting, and to wake them... Where did it go?
I apologize, Cole. That is not a pain you can heal.
That's Cole interpreting Solas' own thoughts and feelings. You're real, and it means everything could be real. It changes everything, but it can't. They sleep, masked in a mirror, hiding, hurting. Now what's going on here? You see, the twist ending of the Trespasser DLC reveals that, the entire time, Solas has actually been the main antagonist. He manipulated the guy you thought was the antagonist into doing what he wanted. You were just some unfortunate rando who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he spoiled all of his plans. He wasn't lying when he said the ancient elves used the Vallaslin as slave markings. He knew because he was alive back then, because he is actually Fen-Harel, the trickster god from the Elven Pantheon.
You're Fen-Harel.
I was Solas first. Fen-Harel came later. An insult I took as a badge of pride. The Dread Wolf inspired hope in my friends, and fear in my enemies. Not unlike Inquisitor, I suppose. And now you know. What is the old Danish curse? May the Dread Wolf take you?
And so he did.
I did not. I would not lay with you under false pretenses.
Back in his prime, the world was a magical place where living things and spirits existed in harmony, and magic could be used to achieve fantastical wonders. But it could also be used to commit horrific atrocities, like the aforementioned mass slavery. So he made the decision to destroy the world and split it into two, create the boring regular world we know and love, and the magical fantasy dream world called the Fade.
Truth.
I sought to set my people free from slavery to would-be gods. I broke the chains of all who wished to join me. The false gods called me Fen-Harel, and when they finally went too far, I formed the Veil and banished them forever. Thus I freed the Elven people, and in so doing, destroyed their world.
You love the Fade. Why would you create the Veil to hide it all away?
Because every alternative was worse.
It's a great twist, and it explains so much about Solas and his character. He woke up in our world and found it dull, the people lifeless and grey without the magic he was used to. He set about to rectify his mistake, restoring the old world even if it meant killing almost everyone in the new one. You started off as just another tool to try and achieve that, but over time, and if you romanced him, he began to see that you weren't grey and lifeless like the others. You were vivid, you were there. Like Cole says, you're real, and it means everything could be real. Maybe the world that was isn't gone. Maybe he just needs to learn to appreciate what's in front of him.
You must understand. I awoke in a world where the veil had blocked most people's conscious connection to the Fade. It was like walking through a world of tranquil.
We aren't even people to you.
Not at first. You showed me that I was wrong. Again. That does not make what must come next any easier.
You never cared about us. We were the means to an end.
You were people, and you deserved better. Like all the rest I've used in one hopeless battle after another.
Maybe there's still hope. Maybe you could have convinced the main antagonist that he's wrong and lived happily ever after. But as Cole says, it changes everything, but it can't. Dragon Age lead writer Patrick Weeks has said that in the fateful cutscene where Solas breaks up with you, the original truth he was going to tell you wasn't the truth of the Vallaslin. He was going to tell the Inquisitor everything. Who he really was, what he was trying to do. And in that moment, maybe he can abandon his mission and just live a normal life in this new world. But he realizes he can't, and he has to break off his emotional entanglement with you and completely disengage, or else he'd never be able to destroy this world and all its people, including you. We've all been there. Relationships, right?
I will save the elven people. Even if it means this world must die.
Hey, remember earlier when I mentioned everyone's favourite horned and horny Black Ops operative Iron Bull? Well, he's relative again, because Iron Bull is a romance option who betrays you too. Or at least, he can betray you. Towards the end of the game, you're given the choice of advising Bull to either remain loyal to his Canary handlers back home, or to save the diverse group of mercenaries he's recruited to act as his cover. If you choose the mercenaries, he effectively quits the Canary and becomes an outcast. But he saves the people he loves. If you choose the Canary, his mercenary company dies, but you gain the Canary's support. That is until the DLC's closing moments. The whole DLC you've been fighting the senior Canary agent who's on a bit of a bombing spree, and she asks Iron Bull for help fighting you.
Hisrad, we need you. Videk Katas.
Good call leaving me behind. The Vallaslin asked me to lend a hand though. Nothing personal. Boss.
And he just does it. He even calls you Bass, which in Canary means thing. Cole, the guy who can literally sense people's emotions, says he felt nothing when he turned on you.
I didn't feel it. There wasn't any pain.
And then you just kill him. There's not even like a special cutscene for it, you just cut him down like any random NPC. In the game's epilogue, because of your romance with him, you're actually blamed for the Canary attack. Not many games have the balls to end their relationship arcs of you cutting off your lover's head then accuse you of being a terrorist. Iron Bull may have mattered a lot to the player, but to him you were little more than a pleasant distraction. He is, at his heart, an agent of a totalitarian government that expects complete compliance from its citizens. If you didn't make that one important decision that cuts him off from that, no amount of heart-shaped chocolates and back rubs are going to make him abandon it. The Betrayal is such a good example of why fans find BioWare's character writing so compelling, because so often they manage to make their companions feel like people with their own internal worlds, their own agendas and ideologies. And that just leads us back to Solas. I've heard people say that Solas is an unsympathetic fascist who cries a lot of crocodile tears, but is ultimately a through and through villain. And I've heard a lot of people say he's one of the most relatable and complex villain in any major video game. I think that huge divide in opinion is honestly a really good reflection of BioWare's ability to craft characters. Solas feels as close to a real person as you can realistically get in this sort of game. His worldview is clear and developed. It's very rare that you make an important decision where you don't know how Solas will react. When he does react in unexpected ways, it's giving you a lot of new information about who he is and what he values. The breakup scene is probably the best example of this, as it's such a pivotal moment in both the player characters and Solas' own development, and it shows the huge strengths of BioWare's approach to romance. No matter what you do, Solas ends the Trespasser DLC announcing his intention to remake the world, and you announcing your intention to stop him from doing that. But how the players internally see these characters can vary hugely. Solas might see the player as a hateful animal who represents everything wrong with the new world, a respected friend who he is genuinely regretful about killing, or as someone he loves so much he risks abandoning his entire worldview if he spends any more time around them. A lot of people are pretty negative on BioWare's writing, and specifically how little your own narrative choices sometimes affect the story. Remember the Mass Effect 3 discourse and how it all boiled down to a choice between red, blue and green? And I do agree with what those people are saying, but also think a lot of the time that's not really what the game's about. People argue that your decisions don't matter, but they do. From big decisions like who becomes king, to small decisions like who you romance, they all affect how you feel about this world and its history, how characters react to you, how your characters react to other people, how you as a player feel about a character you've seen a side of that most people never will. Romancing Solas is a completely optional thing that won't even be available to a lot of players, and which doesn't affect the actual mechanics of the plot in any way. And yet I think it's the best romance in any video game I've ever played, precisely because it's so unsatisfying and so emotionally charged and in the end, tragic. Thanks for listening. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe so that I can get famous enough to have my own Casper mattress sponsorship.